Home sales seem lackluster, a bumpy latest month for tax collections, and a state unemployment rate remains unchanged. Dr. MichaelPakko, economist with UALR's Institute for Economic Advancement, joins me for insight on the Arkansas economy. Welcome to the program. Good to have you back with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You've been doing well?
I've been doing well, keeping busy, trying to keep track of this economy.
Good. That's good to know. Listen, you missed a real opportunity about a week and a half ago up at the state legislature. They had a 5.5-hour hearing where 4 economists talked for the better chunk of that 5.5 hours. It was, if you liked economist talk, it was the equivalent of an X-rated movie, I told someone. So it was economists speak forever. So you missed out on all the fun there. It was about the Big River Steel project.
Right.
You've had a chance to look at some of the reports that have come out from those economists. Assemble it all for me. What's your kind of takeaway from it?
Well, I think given your description, it's just as well that they didn't have yet another economist there to stir up the pot. But, I've looked at the reports, and while they look at different aspects of the project, they generally seem consistent with the initial assessment from the AEDC. I would say that this is probably the most thoroughly vetted development project we've had in some time. So I think it's a good development that we have our political figures looking into it in such detail before they make their decision on it.
Yeah, and obviously they were doing that in order to set precedent, I think, for future potential projects along those lines. You think that they've got a pretty streamlined system now in terms of doing that as an economist, kind of looking at this from the outside in?
Well, in any kind of project like this, there is going to be one issue at a time. Each one is going to be distinct and unique in some sense. I think the precedent of actually spending time looking at the details and trying to assess the net present value of these projects is definitely a good thing. You certainly don't want to just jump into something because it promises great benefits without looking at the potential costs.
Mm. Do you see anything that gives you a red flag or pause for concern in any of the statistics and information that's out there? Do you just what's your general assessment?
It's a lot of money on the line. I think the thing to keep in mind is that the developers have confidence in their project, and as long as the state has the ability to hold the developers to performance standards, there are certain clawback provisions,
Correct.
I guess they call them, that somehow, to some extent, protects the state from the losses, so that we're not socializing the losses and privatizing the profits. That's the thing we want to avoid. Is taking on the risk of a project like this as taxpayers.
And do you know anything about these one-handed economists that they were talking about, that Harry Truman talked about, that he said he only wanted one-handed economists because every economist seems to open up with on one hand this and on the other hand that? That's kind of an old economist joke.
Yeah, but I've never met a one-handed economist to tell you the truth. And I'm certainly not one either.
I gotcha. Let's turn our attention to some things happening in the state economy. Let's look at the latest employment and unemployment numbers that we got from the state of Arkansas. About 7.2% unemployment rate, unchanged from the previous month.
Right.
One of the big things to me that I see is that we have seen a loss of the labor force. I think you've maybe pointed out over the last 13 consecutive months we've been seeing a decline in labor force. What's happening?
Yeah, that's right. Total in the past 13 months, about 30,000 people have dropped out of the labor force. Now, that could be overstating how large the labor force was a year ago. There's some uncertainty about the statistics. It's based on a survey. But it's a combination, what often economists point to, the discouraged worker syndrome, that as the economy fails to improve, workers stop looking for a job, and then they're not counted as being part of the labor force anymore. It also could be retirement, either early retirement or scheduled retirement. We are reaching that point where baby boomers are starting to leave the labor force permanently and enter their retirement years. And so in part, the downturn is an expected trend, a demographic, predictable variable. It really does seem that the movement we've seen over the past 13 months indicates probably a combination of factors of people leaving the labor force either planned or unplanned, and that's a real concern.
Is there any way to drill down into that survey or those statistics and understand better why some of the folks are leaving the labor force? Is there any way to track that?
Well, you know, on the national level, you can look at some more details, but at the smaller levels you get to, state or a small state like Arkansas, you're going to have a lot of just random variability in the statistics. It's hard to drill down into what the numbers are saying. And part of the problem is also that there's an independent payroll survey, which is giving us somewhat different signals. Whereas we're seeing declines in employment by the household survey, the payroll survey is showing, well, not strong growth, but at least over some time, positive trend growth. We've seen 30,000 new jobs on payrolls in Arkansas since we reached the trough of the recession nearly 4 years ago now, and that's not a great rate of growth. Is less than 1% per year over the past 3 years. At least it's positive, and we're making progress toward recovering some of the jobs we lost during the recession.
Let's talk about a couple of the sector gainers and losers in the latest monthly survey of employers. I always try to look at those numbers in a year-over-year context so that you can kind of see how it compared, because you can have some mood swings from month to month, as you well know. I noticed that the trade, transportation, utility sector was up 8,900 jobs over the previous year in the latest statistics. That's February 2013 versus 2012. And manufacturing actually had a net positive, 200 jobs, not huge, but what do you think we're seeing in those trade, transportation, utility statistics there? That's typically a leading indicator to some extent of things that are moving in the pipeline.
Well, and it's an important sector for the Arkansas economy as well, particularly the transportation component of that. If you look under the surface of that, that's a very broad sector. It covers a lot of different areas. One of the surprising areas of gain has been in retail sales. So we're seeing more employment in the retail sector, which really wasn't forecast by most economists. That's kind of a stable sector, not subject to big swings, but you know, that's an important one we want to see an increase in. Manufacturing has been suffering job losses for well over a decade. That's not just a cyclical phenomenon, but it's good to see some stabilization and a little bit of positive movement there. The other area of real concern when you look at the weakness in the sectors is construction. And that follows from some of the developments in the housing sector, which I think you'll probably want to talk about a little bit here too.
And year over year, those construction jobs down 2,900 from where they were in the previous year's February.
And that's one of the sectors actually that's continued to decline since the labor market as a whole has started to improve. Manufacturing, construction, a couple other smaller sectors haven't shown much sign of recovery over the past 3 years.
Home sales been somewhat sluggish. Actually, the latest home sales report was fairly anemic, I would describe it. But you can't live off just 1 month statistics. Still, when we look at what's happening in the home sales area, we do see somewhat of a rebound when you look at it in the context of where we were pre-recession and now. But it's not clicking on all cylinders.
No, it's not at all, and it's something of a surprise to me, because there's really a lot of elements in place for resurgence in home sales. We've got the lowest interest rates in our memory anyway. There's probably some overhang of demand. You know, but it's just an area that we haven't seen a lot of movement. Now, January was up, February was down. Over the course of the 2 months, the year over year, we're looking at somewhere around 3.5% growth, which is consistent with what I'm expecting for the rest of this year. But January and February are among the slowest months of the year for home sales. Not many people are out shopping for houses in the wintertime. So it's really hard to get a read on what 2013 is going to look like just based on the first 2 months of the year.
So sit tight and hold on, right?
Yeah, keep an eye on that one.
All right. He's Dr. Michael Pakko with UALR's Institute for Economic Advancement. As always, appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.